Hi everyone, my name is Natalie Dawson. Welcome to Leader Talk. This show is proudly brought to you by Brainiact. Each week we are meeting with incredible leaders from across Australia and around the world to discuss all things leadership and business insights. Each person coming on this show has given up their valuable time for one very clear purpose: to give back to small and medium business owners. Many of us will agree that the word sales can sometimes carry negative connotations. Yet we also agree that in the absence of sales execution, businesses will not be able to perform at their best. So the questions are: 1, how do you build a great sales culture? And 2, how do you implement a great sales strategy? Today, my co-host, CEO of Pierlite, Gustav Arianto, and I are fortunate to chat to our guest speaker, John Arneil, General Manager ANZ of James Hardie Building Products, a global leader in fibre cement innovative products. Through his experience working in Europe, North America, and the Asia-Pacific region, John will share with us his secrets about how to build a great sales culture and ensure best performance. Welcome to the show, John.
Thanks, Natalie. Hi, Gus.
Hello, John.
Now, John, we always begin these shows with 2 fun questions that we ask our guests. So we have the 2 prepared for you. The first one: what is your favourite sport?
I have lots of favourite sports. I was really fortunate. I grew up with a twin brother, and we were both kind of sports mad growing up. So we kind of cricket, tennis, rugby league, athletics, golf. Like we just did a lot of different things. But we probably played cricket the most, and we kind of have an affinity for that game, and probably played that through to our early 20s before kind of work and family and stuff catches up with you, and spending a full Saturday every Saturday or even Sunday becomes a bit much. So, cricket would say would be the favourite sport right now.
Fantastic. And when you're not at work, where will we find you?
With my family, because I have an ever-growing family. I'm about to have my 4th child in a month. So that's going to get exciting. And so life's very busy outside of work, and work's very busy. So, but nothing grounds you more than a 2-year-old bossing you around on a regular basis, which is what happens to me every night I go home. So, yeah, it's a lot of family fun at the moment.
I hear you. Before we go on, John, we were hoping you could share your story with everyone. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure.
So we can understand who John Arneil is.
Right. Yep. I'll try and keep it fairly brief. So I grew up on cattle properties in central Queensland. A little bit different, I guess, to a lot of people. So I had a twin brother, and we had quite a large family. And so I learned a lot of kind of life lessons fairly young, sometimes the hard way, sometimes not. I went to boarding school, university, and ended up landing a job as a graduate with a company called James Hardie, who I'd never heard of at the time, and thought I'd give it a crack for 6 or 12 months and see what happened. 19 years later, I'm still here. I've been on a fantastic journey with this business. I've done about 17 different roles. I've had about 15 different bosses over that period. And I've worked both here in Australia or across APAC, then into Europe for 4 years, and into North America a bit over 3 years, and then back here a few years ago. And now I'm looking after the Australian New Zealand business for James Hardie. So it's been a great ride, and the business has been fantastic, helping me, I guess, achieve my own career goals. And I've hopefully given a little bit back as well along the way.
Wow, that's fantastic. With your experience, we do have a few leadership questions we wanted to ask. From your experience, what do you think is what are the most important attributes of successful leaders today?
I think there's plenty of challenges in today's environment. I think there's never been more important to have a very clear vision of the what and the why right now. There's a lot of noise in markets right now, globally, but also locally. And so as a leader, your people, and certainly your customers, your shareholders, the community, need to be very clear on what you stand for as a brand and as a business, and certainly the why. And certainly from an internal perspective, if your employees don't really understand what we're here to do, what we're here to achieve, and what lies behind the P&L and the numbers we talk to, it becomes a fairly pointless venture. So I think that's really important. I think some of the other pieces. Sorry, Gus, go.
And John, sorry, maybe you can answer it after that because I just cut you off. When you talk about the what and the why around the vision, one of the attributes of a leader, how do you actually execute that simply? As a leader, sometimes have a different minds to the people on the factory floor, for example. But I'm just cutting you off, so please answer it when you finish with you.
No, that's fine. I think it was one of the points I was going to mention. I think to exactly that point, I think as a leader today, people have to be able to get on the same page with you. You need to be able to connect with people at all levels within an organization. It can't just be from up high, this is how we see things and this is what we must do. It absolutely has to be, you need to be connected. From our perspective here, I need to make sure that I'm connected with our operators on the plant floor, all the way through to our salespeople in the field, through our corporate offices and whatever else, or other people you can get to. So that for me is probably one of the key takeaways. The other one I'd talk to is how do you create a really safe environment for people to be themselves and kind of be the best version of themselves. There's this term psychological safety, which we've been using a little bit, and it is important, especially in an environment at the moment where people are in lockdown, have been for a long time in some cases. Mental illness and mental health is getting a lot of airplay, which is good. There's some real people hurting out there. So I think that the psychological safety, making sure people, in their workplace feel safe in themselves, both physically, of course, zero harm is extremely important in our business and a lot of other businesses, but certainly from a mental perspective as well, that they feel safe and can talk openly. I think that's really important.
Yeah. I actually wanted to ask you a question about that, John. How do you bring the best out of the people you lead? In addition to psychological safety, is there anything else that you would recommend?
I think having really clear expectations and making sure people, in the organisation understand what those expectations are. And they're typically a collective expectation. But for yourself as a leader, your team need to understand where you stand, because ultimately, if you talk about leadership shadow, I can talk about something today. I can get on the floor and do something today, but you're only really impacting a small group of people. So the leadership shadow is when your people take what you've talked to, the standards you've set, and then cascade that throughout an organisation. Really important that you get that piece right. Yeah, that's probably one of the things I'd talk to there. I think the other bit would be people, especially high-performing people, they need space to be their best selves. If I can get that out, it's something where especially in an environment like this, you can kind of get into a micromanagement style. You've got your daily meetings, you're tracking numbers extremely closely because what else are you going to do? You're sitting at home in lockdown, you're going to be all over the detail you can be. I think most people don't perform as well as you'd like if you don't give them the space to be them, a version of themselves they want to be versus somebody that you want them to be. And I think that's a key difference. Give people space, especially high-performing people, people who have experience. So.
Yeah, John, I could be biased on this. And for the audience, I worked for John for 5 years, and I can actually second what he said. And I wanna talk more about giving a space for high-performing people to do what they can do to bring the best out of their capability to the business. And I always remember how you manage and bring the best out of me, because you are someone that very clear in your expectation, and yet you don't actually, I don't say you don't check, you definitely know your expectation, the what and the why and the expectation. But I never once in that 5 years feel like I'm confused of the outcome I need to bring to the table. And I think what you said before, it's absolutely crucial in any leaders, creating that safe environment where people can wake up in the morning and actually say, I will do the best I can because I'm very, very clear in the outcome that I need to bring to the table.
Yeah, and we'll talk to it more when we get into some of the sales pieces, but clarity of objective for a salesperson, incredibly important in getting that right. I think the other element from getting the best out of people, you've got to be really honest. And this is something Gus is very good at for the people listening in, being very honest and being very much himself, which we all love about him. But I think that, you don't have to be uncouth, but you need to be able to speak fairly plainly, so people understand, because everyone has a different lens. When you're listening to what Gus says today, 5 different people will take away 5 different things. So being able to speak very simply, very honestly, and very much to the point is really important, because if you want people to take away a message, you have to repeat that message multiple times, but you have to speak in a language that people can understand first and foremost, and take away the message that you're trying to drive. And if somebody hasn't performed, or they've let themselves down, or you've let yourself down, you need to be able to just have the courage to have that conversation. If someone does something that's not appropriate, you're not going to walk past that. And there's a phrase I use a lot, which is, the standard you walk past is the standard you set, or the standard you accept. And that translates across every function of the business, whether it's operations in zero harm, whether it's, again, you're on the road, your behavior when you're driving your car, or when you're just having a conversation with a colleague. If something doesn't make sense, you need to call it out. And that takes honesty, it takes courage, and it's hard. And getting the best out of your people, though, relies on that. Because if you don't, it can go sideways really easily. So that'd be something I'd call out as well.
And I'm just curious, Gus, you said, working under John's leadership, he, gave you the room, you were able to grow. Have you carried this across to Pierlite, out of curiosity?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it will be a lie to say that I didn't bring all the good bits that I experienced, and I'm very openly said that my experience working under John for 5 years was one of the best time for my career as well. Yes, and the one thing that I do with my team is clear expectation, the what and the why, and allow them to actually put their flavor. So yes, if I bring an analogy, I tell them that I want to cook noodles, but I can't be very descriptive to how exactly the level of the salt water and the heat, because it's become very descriptive, and that's what John bring to the organization. And I'm that was 5 years ago, by the way, so I'm a long time ago, but yes, I did bring, and I still execute it today at my business name Pierlite.
Fantastic. John, you've mentioned you've worked extensively across Europe, North America, and APAC. From your experience, what type of leadership do you think transcends different markets and cultures and best drives the performance of a business?
Oh, look, it's a good question, because I think people get very caught up in Australia, we do things this way. In Europe, or in the UK, or in Canada, we're different. We're Canadians. And I can tell you firsthand, it is, yes, there are variances around the world, or people are culturally slightly different, but generally in business, things are very, very similar. And there's a couple of things I'd call out. The first one would be that if you can have a culture where best idea wins, it goes a long way to really creating the best outcomes, because ultimately innovation is extremely important in thinking, both around, hey, products and services, but also business model. And you can't be sitting in a room where the loudest voice wins. And you see that time and time again in organizations, where people don't feel safe to talk. This person's the loudest and apparently the smartest because they're the loudest, which is most of the time not true. And you don't actually get the people who really have some innovative thinking and thoughts. You don't get that out on the table. And so as a business, you lose. And it comes down to diversity of thought. And that's something that, again, it's honestly anywhere in the world, it's the same thing. If you can create a culture where the best idea in the room wins, it's not who said it, it's not the boss said it. We do a lot here about engaging operators, where the best ideas we have when it comes to manufacturing comes off the floor. We have some we have some great people have been here a long time in some cases, and they know the machines, they know how to get the best performance, and we just have to ask and listen, and then take action. And I think there's another one here, which, and Gus will relate to this, being relentless in your drive to succeed, doesn't matter where you are, is very important. And again, we'll talk about sales. It's important in sales, I like the word relentless because I tell you, look around the business world, it is people who are relentless that win 9 times out of 10. Yeah, you need to be able to get up day in, day out and not necessarily work the hardest, but remain focused on what you're going to achieve day in, day out until you achieve it. And you need to be relentless in that focus. I think the last one would be, and I kind of already spoke about it, it's a little bit about the culture and actions. So I think your actions, and our CEO right now, Jack Trong, has a saying he says quite a lot, and it's very true, which is your actions need to be so loud we can't hear you speak. And there's variations of that saying, but it's an incredibly powerful message. And actions are, what drives people. So again, as a leader, if you think you're going to tell someone something and they're going to do it, then you haven't been a leader for very long because you haven't seen how it doesn't work. You need to walk the talk. You need to have a discipline around what you do. If you say you're going to do something, you have to do it. And I can, a very easy example for me is I'll walk through a car park. If I see an earbud on the ground because some operator has walked, out of shift and got into his car and dropped an earbud, I will always pick it up. Because if I don't pick it up, if I don't have a discipline to pick up that earbud and put it in the bin, what else am I going to walk past? If I walk past that, I could walk past an operator who is in a dangerous situation and not act. And that's not acceptable. And so that it's a similar conversation when you talk about expectations, having high expectation, reasonable expectations, but high expectations, and then making your actions speak far, far louder than your words. That's a really basic principle, and it works. People follow what you do. They don't necessarily follow what you say, but they will always follow what you do.
John, I want to ask you, I want to elaborate more because I experience how you run your business. You talk about diversity of thought. When I look back at my time at James Hardie, you are one of the leading the organization where you don't tend to worry too much the similarity background of where people come from. You focus on employing people from diverse type of industry to equip the James Hardie kind of, this thing about, diversity of thought have to come from diversity of backgrounds. I implement that in my business today, and the result are just advancing. Can you elaborate? Because many companies with a small, medium, big, we tend to take the easy way out where, we are a hardware store. So, let's get people from the same industry because they know what we do. What's your view around this, John?
I think it's well researched now, Gus, and it's the evidence is overwhelming that the more diverse your workforce, the more successful your business will be. And there's lots of studies that people could Google and find that will attest to that. But ultimately, the more diverse you are, that could be cultural diversity, it could be gender diversity. There's lots of different types of diversity and inclusiveness that we try and work towards these days in terms of where we're trying to get to. But ultimately, it's about, when I think about, you sit down in a room, and I think about our Rose Hill plant, we have 37 or 41, I forget the number, different nationalities that work in our Rose Hill plant out of 250 people. So it's a hugely diverse cultural melting pot. And the thinking we get is amazing from our people. So, and when we ask operators, and with that diversity of thought, you'll get 7 different options, to a problem, a solution to a problem. And then you can go through those and figure out what makes sense and what doesn't, rather than if they were all from the same background, culturally, all came up through the same way of working, you get one solution to a problem because it's very much that group think. This is how we do things here, right? So bringing in cultural diversity, gender diversity makes a huge impact to any business, and it's something we strive for, not always successfully, but it's something we are trying to get better at over time. It's a good call.
Can I just ask, sorry, you mentioned before the best idea wins, and you said that you could have a quiet person that is quite an introvert, let's say, that's quiet and doesn't want to put their hand up but has a great idea. If I am, let's use Gus's example, a hardware store owner, how would I encourage that person, or what advice would you have to actually get everyone to voice their ideas? something that doesn't cost
Sure.
too much, let's say?
Yeah, well, no, it doesn't cost anything. It goes back to creating an environment where people feel safe to have a conversation and let their thoughts be heard. If you sit in it, you see it again. I've seen it. You sit in a management meeting. You've got a couple of people to do all the talking, and people just kind of take a mental step back, and don't engage. And as a leader, you have to call that out. You have to actually call people out, which may not be comfortable in the moment for those people, but typically you need to create an environment where, hey, everyone is equal in this room. There is no best idea. There's no worst idea. It's about everyone putting out what their thoughts are. And then so as a group and a collective, we can come together and go, okay, well, based on that, based on where we're going and what we need, that thinking over there makes a bunch of sense. Let's go test that, and move forward. So that's I guess where I'm coming from with that. It's really up to the leader to help facilitate and make that happen. When someone is not able to do that, that's your fault, not theirs. It's kind of how I look. There's exceptions, of course, but as a leader, you have responsibilities, and one of those responsibilities is to be accountable for everyone in your team, not just the people that want to be heard and seen. So.
And I think that just to add to that, if we remember what Koshal Kapadia from Shred when he spoke at Leader Talk, I can't remember, Leader Talk 7, about simplicity, the capability of any leaders to actually know its place of the conversation they bring. So in my journey, I see different type of leaders, leaders that I consider the peacock of the room, that unless they show the capability of neurosurgeon type of topics before everyone talk, when the people in the audience are literally the people from the factory plant, like it's really simple stuff. You need to know what you bring to the topic, and the more you create a safe environment like what John talking about, the leader can actually get the maximum benefit out of it.
And I'll tell you, Gus used to be one of those people. Can you imagine? Gus was used to be in meetings, and I would have to pull Gus out of his shell because he was, worried that what he was going to say wasn't smart enough or wasn't good enough. And I'm thinking, man, you're a mechanical engineer. You've got better thinking than most people in this room. But that's the reality. Everyone's different, and in social situations or in settings like this, a lot of people don't feel comfortable putting themselves out there, right? And that's where, as a leader, you have to facilitate that. A lot of the time offline, you have to do it in the meeting. You can pull people aside and have a conversation. Someone's being a bit loud, you might want to grab them and pull them aside and say, hey, how about you leave some air in the room for everybody else? But you've just got to facilitate that and create that environment that really makes people successful. And high performing people, they will migrate to that type of environment. The people you don't necessarily want are going to sit in an environment which is tough, just disengaged and just go with the flow. Highly engaged, motivated, high-performing people will move to an environment where they can be successful. And that's, especially right now, I just read an article this morning about the Great Resignation, apparently, which is on its way, where 40% of people in Australia have thought about leaving their jobs in the last 6 months. So when you talk about leadership, you talk about the challenges coming, you have to really be responsible and accountable for creating environments where people want to work and can be successful.
And I think I want to call it out, Nat. When John mentioned that story about I used to come to him and I said, "Oh, John, I'm in the room. Not only my English, as every audience can hear, I have an accent. My thinking, my analogy normally relate to noodles and stuff. Yet I actually have the thinking that I want to share." John actually pushed me to actually say it as you like, Mike. Say it as how you want to say it, and the more I do that, the more I create an impact. And come back to what John said, the leader responsible for this, and I have to give it back to John. John create a safe environment for me to be able to do that. And now every leaders, whether you owning a hardware store, you owning a I can't help myself, or you owning a kebab shop, you have the opportunity You have the opportunity to actually create a safe environment so your kebab have different flavor.
Yeah, look, it's such great advice. We're laughing because we always say Gus mentions the kebab shop as the example. Look,
Or noodles.
or noodles.
Yep.
One of the two.
I remember.
Look, staying on the topic of leadership, I'd love to know, John, what is your proudest leadership moment, and perhaps why? We know it's tough being a leader, but what would be your proudest?
I think it's a tough question because I don't think you step back and go, wow, that point right there was extremely proud. I think every day there's small little moments which you're proud of. When you see people kind of step up for the first time, or take a step back for the first time, or put themselves out in an uncomfortable situation. Look, I think you're looking at one right now. I think Gus, one of my and you have to kind of reflect on it a bit because it didn't hit me at the time, to be honest. I just thought I was, just cracking along, and here was Gus. And my view on Gus was he'd been hadn't been recognised for his capability, and it was very easy for me to see that and give him the opportunities, and he absolutely smashed every opportunity that was given to him. Worked harder, wanted it more, and delivered the results. Exceeded people's expectations. And so in reflection, Gus absolutely is one of, the prouder moments I've had, which is a bit awkward. Sorry, Gus, but we talked before about having awkward conversations. But yeah, it's Gus has done extremely well. And, from Hardie, he's gone from strength to strength, like wherever he goes, he creates an environment of success, and people like to win. And so, Gus helps people win. And so they want to be around him. And, he's a good guy, and that's certainly one of my prouder moments from a leadership perspective. So sorry, Gus, for making you feel uncomfortable.
Thank you.
I think, I think the other piece probably for me would be first stepping into a GM role 4 or 5 years ago, and then kind of not having much exposure to certain parts of the business and having to jump in and drive it. We came together pretty well as a team fairly quickly in that first year, and we managed to pretty much break every record across most metrics. And that was really just about getting on the same page, all believing we could make it happen, and executing. It's all about action in the end. Your actions need to speak louder than your words, and we executed really well in that first year and have continued that trend through to today. So it's been a good run.
And of course, you will be very proud that James Hardie, if I'm not mistaken, in the ISX top 20 now, eh?
Yes,
so you should be very proud.
I'm proud to be part of a company that's in the top 20 ASX at the moment. So yeah, we're certainly, as a global business, we're moving forward at a rapid rate. And our CEO Jack Trong has really led the business and helped us rethink how we go to market. And yeah, we're certainly seeing the benefits of that, and it's only just the beginning. We're on a path now, and we're a long way from done. So it's an exciting time to be at James Hardie.
Excellent. And what about you, Gus? Have you got a proudest moment that you'd like to share? It is hard to think of one. You are right, because you kind of don't actually think about it on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Look, if I look back, I'm biased about a business named James Hardie. I worked there for a decade, and until today I'm very, very close to that business, even though I've been distant for 5 years. They have excellent people, excellent leader. But if you ask me what my proudest leadership moment, when I left the business, as John mentioned, the business was in the good shape. I never think that the business can even grow. Like, as a person, you always think, wow, I achieved certain things. I must be very special. Everyone are replaceable. I moved, and the size of James Hardie tripled. And I look back now, I'm thinking, I didn't do that well, obviously, because James Hardie grow even further. But to come back the question of what my proudest moment, the team that I left, the business that I left, grow, win, and the people still engage with me, congratulating me for something different that I do. And I think as a leader, I feel very proud. I feel very proud. What's the point of building something great to just see destroyed? And and James Hardie, I take off my hat, for the team that is in there, for Jeff Mann, the state manager for Victoria, that is a friend to me. Robbie P, the GM of sales, like John Arneil, well done, for you guys. And that's make me very proud. That's my proud moment. Every time I look back at what I used to build, even growing more in absence of me, because they are just great.
Yeah. Thanks, Gus. We're going to move on to sales performance, because conscious that's what, we're all keen to discuss. Because let's face it, we had this discussion before. I'm one of those, when I think of sales, I do think of it as a dirty word. It's not something, that it's super comfortable with. So from your perspective, John, what do you think are the attributes of a great salesperson? So if we can just picture this perfect person.
Okay, so straight away you've got it all wrong, because no one in sales is perfect. So I think I start with your first point. Sales is a dirty word. And I grew up in a family where, it was a dirty word. My mother even struggles still to say, "Were you in sales?" Like she really, it's just something about the culture in Australia where people think of sales, and I think used car salesman, or that, that mentality of some con person trying to swindle you out of your money. I mean, it couldn't be further from the truth. And I think, in other parts of the world where I've worked, sales is a absolutely respectable profession. You go to university to get that degree, and you get into market, and you make great money, and you live a fantastic life as a salesperson. I think in Australia we've got some ways to go in terms of recognizing what that is. But we're down a path to getting there. In terms of what makes a great salesperson, I think, and this is where I always like Gus, right? It's easy conversation with Gus, because Gus and I are quite alike in one way, which is we're fairly driven to succeed. And drive as a salesperson, incredibly important. In fact, the first thing I look for in recruiting any person, by the way, not just sales, but is drive. Because drive, you can't teach. No, we're not discriminating against anyone, but someone who is driven and can drive, as I said before, be relentless around achieving an outcome, will typically be successful. And in sales, it's even more important. So that first element around drive, really important. I think being smart is another piece we call out. Look, when I say smart, I don't mean rocket scientist smart. I mean somebody who is really keen to understand the best and most efficient way to get something done, and really connect with people to understand what their needs and wants are, really understand their market, so that when they call on somebody or when they talk to somebody, every minute of that time is valuable versus wasting your time with someone who is not the right target. So smart to me is about how do you talk to the right person every single time, with the right message every single time, at the right time every single, because timing is very important as well. So I think the smart piece is important. Resilience. You wouldn't be in sales for long if you're not resilient, because you are going to get knocked down and you have to get back up again and again and again. And that is okay. That's how you learn. And I think resilience important. And you don't have to be an extrovert or an introvert, or resilience is just something that really helps you get on with what your job is and how to move through your life. And I look at my kids now in primary school, they're teaching resilience, which is fantastic. I think it's one of the most underrated skill sets around, is being resilient in the face of adversity. And I think in sales, extremely important. Two last things. One is being disciplined. We've already spoken to that, so I probably wouldn't talk about it too much. It's about setting a standard, being disciplined. In fact, I'll tell you, people ask me, because I was in sales for quite a while. I mean, I was in sales and sales operations type of roles for probably 13, 14 years, and probably at least that long. And so people are like, what's the secret, to a great salesperson? And I'm like, you know what? Actually being, having good manners is a secret. Following up with somebody every single time in a consistent way is a secret. You'll be surprised. Most salespeople just don't follow up. If you're the person that goes in, you have a conversation, you talk to what the person's needs and wants are, you go away and try and match that to what your business's core capability is, and then you follow up and you actually do the right thing in a positive and polite and way, you'd be very surprised how successful you'll be just doing that. It's extremely important. And the last, but probably almost most important thing, is being a fantastic listener. If people think you're in sales to talk, you are dead wrong. And I think people talk, you've got to be an extrovert to be in sales. That is not true. Now, extroverts can be great salespeople, don't get me wrong, and often are. But introverts can also be amazing salespeople, because you need to be able to listen. I mean, ultimately, what are you trying to do in sales? You are matching the basic core competency of your business to the needs and wants of a future customer. And how are you going to know what those future needs and wants are if you don't listen? So being a fantastic listener, really understanding your customer from the ground up, is 101 with sales. And I'll tell you, 100 times you go out, you go on some calls with some people, and this salesperson is just talking at the customer, and the customer's just sitting there looking at them, and I'm like, just stop. Just stop talking. Your job here is not to talk. Your job is to listen, understand, and then talk to exactly what that customer's needs and wants are, and nothing else. So there's some really important lessons in that. And as I said, there's no perfect salesperson. You can come from any different background, any gender, extrovert, introvert, doesn't matter. If you have a couple of basic pieces, you can be very successful.
And can I add to that, Nat, and John, when John's saying about extrovert, if you are extrovert, then you are in sales, you are blessed, but that's not the key that you are successful if you are extrovertly like to talk, right? One thing that I add for the attribute is the ability to be curious and have the ability to ask questions. So the people that you actually service, not sell, service, can actually lay out their problems. And James Hardie in particular teach us well around these capabilities. I still say teach us well. It's funny, John, if you can share, the length of your organization teaching salespeople with simulation, with that simulation. So in that organization, they actually put salespeople into real simulation in the building with the different type of clients, so people have the capability of being curious, asking questions, listening. It's just something that it can't come up automatically. You need to really learn. And I think, John, you run it well, and the organization support it well.
Yeah, thanks, Gus. It is. There's a lot to be said, and you don't need to pay a lot of money and run a. We used to have simulators with paid actors and a whole bunch of different things. But I mean, I came when I was doing sales. We did not do any of that. We just talked to each other. We would role play. Role play might be awkward, but it works. There's lots of different skills you can develop with your colleagues and with your wife, husband, partner. I mean, there's lots of ways to really work through skill sets. You don't need to have a lot of money to be successful.
Just a question on that. You're talking about, role play, simulation. So if we're hiring a salesperson, should we be doing this before we hire them? How do we actually know that we're going to pick someone that's driven, that's resilient? And they're really key things that we're looking for. Is there some sort of test that we should be doing before we hire someone?
It's a good question. We've done lots of things over the years. We used to give people IQ tests and personality tests. We still do quite a bit of testing. Multiple interviews across different stakeholders. Look, the most powerful thing for me, you really need to understand and talk to somebody who that person's worked with or for, or who has been a colleague, or you need to understand what people have done and how they've done it. It is really helpful. Or bring them in and actually we often do. We ask people to present a business plan. So hey, we're going to look at this different market in this geography, in this segment. Come back to us and give us your thoughts on how you'd approach that. I often talk about sales process, and sales process is just like a manufacturing process. If you can order and sequence things correctly, you'll kind of increase the outcome in terms of how successful you are. So, I often talk about sales process with people. So run me through the process you use when you go talk to a customer or a potential customer. There's certainly ways you can walk through whether people kind of have that capability or not. I think testing is a useful tool, but certainly not more than that. It's not the someone can test badly and be an incredible salesperson, and vice versa, by the way. Test amazingly and then not really work out. So testing is just an indicator, and then it's really about, can you get feedback directly from where they've come from people you trust or respect or know. If you can't, then you've really got to potentially dive into different aspects. Like as I said, run me through your process. Help me understand how you think as you walk through revenue generation, or how do you open that market up, and different opportunities like that. You'll get a very good idea. I mean, being specific is very important. So I think there's a few red flags when you're interviewing salespeople. One would be they talk too much, and Gus would remember this. Like if you can't sit there and have a conversation where people are mutually listening and responding to what you say, not just responding. You'll see this, by the way, with your friends and in society in general. People just sit there waiting for their turn to talk, right? They're not actually listening to what you're saying. When you're engaged and you're listening actively, there's lots of good models about active listening. You are responding directly to what that person is saying. You are not sitting there waiting to pitch your amazing idea. Check out what I've got. I've got this great product. And they're sitting there going, I don't even know who you are. Like, what product is that? Like, yeah, you need to be able to listen, respond directly to what the person is saying, and really draw out of them what their needs and wants are. And instead just match that with what you can do. And there's often not a match, right? So you've got to be really clear about getting that match right, even before you walk in the door. So
that's really great advice. Thank you. Empowering a sales team. How do you empower a sales team to achieve a great outcome?
Look, I think we've talked to some of this already. Clarity of objective is the number one for salespeople. If I'm a hunter, or even if I'm an account manager and I'm looking after certain accounts, clarity of what needs to get done drives every action you take in market. So if you're not clear, you will struggle to be successful. It's that simple. So when people leave a job, by the way, especially a salesperson, and you ask them why you left, number one reason is their boss. And if you dig down further, you'll find the number one reason they don't like their boss, or they're not happy, is their boss hasn't been able to give them clarity of what they actually have to go and do. Why are we here? What are we doing? What do I need to achieve? I think so. That's an easy one. I think that people get that. But if you're running a small business, it's not often something you think about. Your people need to know what they get up in the morning for. What are we going to do today? And why are we doing it? Pretty simple. And you don't need to be a rocket scientist to put a couple of lines down on a bit of paper of what that is. You'll find that'll have a decent impact on your people's engagement and how they connect with you as an individual as well. Look, I think, again, as a leader, you need to clear obstacles. So once you've made the goal, it's very clear, you've got everyone in the room, you've motivated them with an inspirational speech of how good they are and how amazing they're going to do out in the market when they get out there. You've really got to clear as a leader, you've got to clear obstacles. Obstacles are everywhere. Noise is everywhere, okay? And as a leader, you need to clear that noise. Make it very clear what they need to get done. If there are things that are distracting, move the distractions. We don't need, as leaders, to go in and do our people's jobs. Your job is actually to help get the pieces out the road that are distracting them from being successful. And that's, again, pretty easy to say, sometimes harder in real life to make that happen. But that can be really powerful. It's like we talked about, you've got to give high-performing people space to be successful. If they're drowning with distraction, with noise, ping coming at them from every direction, they will not be successful. It doesn't matter who they are. So as leadership, you need to be able to remove obstacles.
John, can I just come back to that particular point, because I love that kind of point. It's one point that I personally always believe. As a leader, your job is to actually do the most difficult task. Yet, there's a lot of people. And when I'm talking about a leader, you are a leader at home, you are a leader for your small business, we are a leader in anything, where we are. And yet there is some that is actually expecting the people that have less knowledge, authority, and strength to actually do bigger job and then blame the outcome. And this is the number one reason where sales objectives, salespeople unable to perform well, because the leaders just easily said, "Why didn't you hit that objective?" Well, the obstacle is so big, no one helped me. No one helped me. And you are demonstrating that consistently. When the problem are big, we can access you. And I think the one thing that I take and experience, and I think one thing that I can share, is the ability for a leader to allow the people to come and say, "I have a problem and I can't fix it," in the safe environment, are absolutely crucial in a sustainable performing business.
Absolutely, Gus. I think the last element I'd say is what do salespeople love? Recognition. You cannot miss the recognition. Let's be honest, we all love recognition. Okay, whether you think you do or not, you like recognition. So I think recognizing salespeople. We kicked off, Gus. You were right in the middle of it. We used to have our Australian business conferences, which we've grown over time. They're still going, and then we really started them to recognise amazing performances from people who have gone over and above in the market, shifted markets, segments, done incredible work, and you need to be able to recognise that and thank people for the contribution they make. And call them out in front of their peers. People like recognition, and by the way, again, if you're a driven person, you want to be recognised, and you want to be the person getting the award next year. You want to drive towards that, and if you can hire and motivate and drive a culture that gets you people that actually are driven to succeed, recognition is incredibly important. So
can I also
ask,
John? Can I also ask another thing when we are on the recognition? Recognition, there's two parts, right? So one is recognition, the fact that they can be the best salespeople of the year, the region most successful, blah, blah, blah. How about incentive? Share with me your idea about incentivizing, because, sales relate to incentive. I'm a small hardware store with limited resource and let's call it limited money. How do you respond? How do we build a great business that can recognize and incentivize so the outcome become a sustainable outcome for the business and for the person?
Sure. So I think you could cover this a number of ways. I think we'll start with a basic incentive scheme for potentially businesses which are medium-sized businesses that have a few salespeople and that have incentive schemes. I think the best incentive schemes that I've seen be successful have had nothing to do with the size or the amount of money or things like that. It is all about how real is it. So if you're going to incentivize somebody, make it something that is in their control. If it is not in their control, don't incentivize them, because they will just not do it. We all wake up every morning and go, what do I need to get done today? What am I going to go and achieve? Especially most salespeople, they're driven to get out there and shift the needle. If they're getting measured against something they don't actually control, it is the most demotivating thing in the world. So straight away, if you've got an incentive scheme, you need to go back and look at it and go, is the incentive directly related to what this person does today, this week, this month, this quarter? If it's not, it will not work. So straight away, that is a very fundamental lesson. And we've learned that the hard way here. We've tried to be too broad sometimes. It's going to be this and it's going to be that. People just get demotivated. They can't control the outcome. So why would I bother doing it? So that's probably one of the key call outs there. I think if you get more a layer below that, there's a lot to be said about being very specific and measurable and having lagging and leading incentives. So we talk about, lagging and leading is an important one. So again, this business, old school business, is very much tied up in lagging. What are the numbers? Well, I'll tell you, the numbers we get today have been in the pipe for 12 months. So if you're just measuring people on lagging indicators, again, is it really in their control? Yeah, sure, some of it is, but some of it's not. So you've got to reward and recognize people, incentivize them on leading indicators. And that is different for everybody. If you're in marketing, it could be about how many leads am I creating? That's a leading indicator to a sale down the track. it could be behavioral. How many calls have I done this week? Well, I've done 4 calls a day for 5 days. I know that if I get this many calls done, I will, by default, based on my targeting is very good, that, my close rate is usually 30%. So you can do the math fairly easily and understand that, if I'm doing this many calls a day, my close rate looks like this, I'm going to be this successful this week, this month, this quarter, and I can pretty much work out where I'm going. If it's not specific and measurable, if it's not leading and lagging, you get kind of people who, again, just get demotivated. It's too hard to shift the needle. If I can't shift the needle as a salesperson, I'm just going to sit back and coast along, because ultimately it's out of my control, right?
And the other thing as well, I can see, John, and I love this lead and lag focus in incentives is, and I'm sure you experience this, and I'm sure Natalie can also understand this. When you go to an organization, there's always the big known salesperson, right? The guy that always win the big project, the Mr. Dollar, the dollar man, the $1 million man. This guy has been working for the organization for 10 years, dealing with the same customer. And then you employ a new young guy, because John is a very diverse type of leader that want to get a young guy. Now, this young guy will never, ever, ever able to create the same income to the $1 million sales guy, because the measurement is based on lag. The minute you change it to lead and lag, the Mr. $1 million sales guy have to do the same qualification and finding opportunities equally to the young guy. And then the real performance comes, because those people that actually normally get result because of 20 years relationship, well, we value that. I think organization have to value that. I never run a business where I don't value that relationship, but we have to be giving a credit to the young people, whether it's young or old. I'm not talking about the young generation that come to the business, not by age, equal opportunity to be recognized as the best salesperson. And that's what I felt when I worked for James Hardie. I get equal opportunity to prove myself, because I wasn't based for the dollar that I bring, but for the outcome to my task.
I think no, sorry, Nat, yeah.
I was just curious to know whether, Gus, you've actually implemented this lead and lag at Pierlite as well. Is it something?
Yes, we are, and I'm proudly, even though this talk show is not about my business name Pierlite, about 4 years ago, we introduced what we call sales excellence. And, we changed the whole incentive program based on lead and lag, everyone equally measured on the process from the qualification to the closing of the business, regardless the outcome. So the minute they do the 7 process, they get incentivized, because we know that you wake up in the morning doing that. And then when you hit the lag, of course you get incentivized. The business is there to make money. We not woke up in the morning. We not wake up in the morning opening a business not to make money. Whilst we are in the topic of sales, actually, I love this. All right, let's make it very clear. Every business out there have to make money. And if we have a lag measure, then we have the money. But the lead have to be rewarded equally. So the answer is yes.
Okay. And if we're talking about incentive programs, I've seen some really grand incentive programs, where branches are, against each other to win a round Australia trip, or, to Vanuatu or something like that. Or then there's, electronics that they give away. But if I'm a small to medium business owner, let's use a hardware store owner again, I don't have much money for a grand incentive program. Are there some tips you can give them to actually maximize sales performance? And I'm kind of both of you. I'll throw this to both of you.
Sure.
Any tips out there?
I'll go first, Gus, and then you can jump in. There's a few things. One would be, everybody's in sales. Number one. And Gus will remember this. I used to call salespeople business people, because that's what we are. Salespeople are business people. You're in the market, you're the face of the business, and you're helping run and drive the business day in, day out. So you're a business person. And if for a small business, everybody in that hardware store is responsible and accountable to drive revenue, because that's how we pay wages and get the cash flow we need to get through week by week. So if you haven't got a large sales force or any sales force, if you're the sales force, being the manager of a hardware store, which is often the case, it's about just being really smart. And I'll go back to some of the things we talked about earlier. So there's an old framework, STP, segment target position, which I've used over the years. But there's some just real basic things. And if you think about who is my ideal customer, for one. So if you're sitting in your office and you're thinking, I've only got so many hours this week to get into market or to get on the phone and to rustle up some revenue, because I tell you what, I can see my pipeline start to shrink. I've got to get in front of it, which is not the case right now. It's ballistic in hardware world right now, but that will come off. You've got to really understand who you are first. What is my core capability? What is my core competence? Because ultimately you're matching that to somebody else. There's no point going out and offering something that you're not. That'll be the quickest way to lose revenue and customers, etc. So first, have a really good reflection of who you are. What are my core strengths as a business? What do I offer? Am I great at service? Do I have a unique product proposition? You can go through that and figure that out. Once you understand that, you've then got to go, okay, based on that, who is my ideal customer? Now, an ideal customer is somebody who typically will value what you do over anyone else, will pay more for what you do, what you sell, what you service, more than anybody else. And potentially there'll be somebody who doesn't even know they value you more than others, but you do, because you understand yourself and you understand what you can offer. So based on that, you can then go to market and try and find your ideal customer. I tell you, when you figure that out, you don't need a whole bunch of salespeople out there, because every time you talk to an ideal customer, you'll win the deal. You'll close that sale. When you talk to somebody who isn't your ideal customer because you've kind of a bit confused about who you are or who they are or what they do, you're going to lose most of the time. So again, you've got to be smart about this, and you don't have to have 100 salespeople. You can have one salesperson. If they hit the right person every single time, you are going to be very successful as a business. And so it's how you look at the market, what segments you play in, what positioning am I? Am I high, medium, low? What are my core capabilities? How do I match that with somebody in market that's looking for those things that I offer? And then how do I get there and be relentless in my service approach in how I follow through with them and continue to create value for them every day? So I think there's a business approach as a small business, which is very valuable. You don't need a bunch of salespeople. You need to know who you are, where you're targeting, what market, what segment. As a hardware store, you're in a certain geography. Who are the ideal builders in that local area that you could go talk to, who your service proposition will hit every single time, versus this guy, he's probably too big, he expects a price that's too low, I can't service it, I can't even get supply for that product, but you go talk to him anyway, you are going to lose every time. So why are you talking to him? Just be really clear about who you are and then take that into market. You'll be successful. And that's 101 kind of go-to-market or sales strategy, and it does work. Sorry, Gus, I don't want to jump in before I talk too long.
Just to add to what John say as well, referring what you say also, Nat, incentivize or structuring a sales team that can be applicable to the size of your business. It's about alignment of how you actually incentivize one to the other. So I give you an example. So it's not so much about the size, adding to what John's saying. Once you understand the market, you have only 2 salespeople. One, you give them a trip all over the world, and the other one is not. Then it's become a problem. Salespeople do not really worry what's the size. Well, we are worried. I'm a salespeople back then and still now. I of course we strive to get everything we can for the feeling, but it's more for the feeling, right? Your ability as a business owner to create an environment where winning a dinner at the pub equally important as you actually incentivize someone to actually winning a trip around the world. Because what salespeople do before the price is the ego. the ability of a business to actually capture that ego and making sure that people actually understand, hey, if I do these metrics as what John said, STP, then you get a dinner at the pub, equally powerful and less complex compared to someone that said, hey, I give you a trip around the world and the other one can just eat at the pub. That's where the whole thing destroys. That's my comment.
Oh, look, it's very clear and strong messaging. Thank you to you both. Gus, I'm just looking at the time, and I know you always love to wrap up after each show.
Yeah. So first of all, John, thank you so much for donating your time. I'm very biased about where you come from and the input that you give us, because I was one of your team, and I can second everything you said. Is you actually execute that. I think I start with the attribute of a great leader, the way John mentioning today, the ability to actually have a clarity on vision and the clarity of how the vision become executable vision, and also the ability of a leader to create a safe environment so diversity of thought can come to the business is the number one attribute of a leader. The attribute of a salespeople that is important, that can drive a business, is someone that is smart. And John said that smart, we're not talking about neurosurgeon smart, but common sense smart, driven, drive to win, being curious, ability to listen, and ability to learn. And then if you want to empower salespeople, you need to have a clarity of objectives. Every salespeople that come to your business need to wake up in the morning with a clarity of what win looks like. Smart, driven, real is what John and James Hardie applied in their business, and well done to become the ISX top 20 today. John Arneil, thank you for your time for our leader talk.
Thank you, Gus. Thanks, Natalie.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. For more information and for some great resources to help your business grow, check out brainiact.com.au. Thanks, everyone. Bye.